One Question is brought to you by Turnkey Search, a top industry search firm since 1996. Dan Wolken with the USA Today is our guest on One Question, and Dan, shockingly enough, is the only journalist of major repute who is reporting on the athletic director search at the University of Florida. Dan initially reported 2 weeks ago that Bubba Cunningham at North Carolina and Greg Byrne at Arizona had been targeted. Neither were going to take the job. Since then, we've had additional reports saying that Bubba accepted, later turned back. And then President Fox at Florida just last week in a radio interview said they are specifically going after sitting Power 5 athletic directors. So, Dan, you and I could run through the 63 Power 5 ADs who are still on the board, and we could probably rate the likelihood of all 63, but that would be pretty time consuming. And what do you make of this situation so far? And let's start with the question of why has there been so little reporting on such a high-profile AD opening?
I think one reason is because they're not using a search firm. They're sort of doing it in-house. It's been pretty low-key and very much contained. But what's interesting about the search, and the reason why I wrote about it, was, Jeremy announced in June that he was retiring. June to October 1st is a long time. I mean, it's not that hard to get an AD search done, in 4 months if you have a plan and you know what you're going to do. And they, in fact, met with candidates as early as like mid-July. I can't remember the exact date, but I was getting text messages, hey, they talked to this person, that person. They even sent an airplane out to a location somewhere in far away from Florida. I won't get too specific, but not anywhere close to Florida. And I think actually did meet with some people. So they were talking to candidates back in mid-July, and so then, football season started, and I wanted to just ask the question, why has this job not been filled yet? And if Jeremy is really going to retire on October 1st, they kind of need to hire somebody soon because, as you know, it's not like you hire an AD and he starts the next day. There's a transition process, and it can be a little time consuming. So that led me into some conversations with people and some other facts and a lot of different names and people who they had engaged. But here's the thing is, yes, they have absolutely been focused on sitting Power 5 ADs. We know there's 65 of them. A lot of them are non-starters because, for one, they just don't want to leave, or they have a particular, association with the school that prevents them from leaving, personal situation that they wouldn't want to leave, feel like they're in good shape, all that stuff. And also the right age is important because I think Florida ideally would like somebody who is, probably in that 40 to 50 range, where they're going to be there a while. And so that limits your pool. And they've had a look, I don't want to say they've had a tough time hiring somebody, but they have engaged a lot of people who have said no. And of course, when they hire whoever they're going to hire, they're going to say, this is the first choice, this is the guy we wanted all along. And I mean, that's just not true.
Are you surprised that and I'm just going to mention some cities, well, Chapel Hill and Tucson/Phoenix being two that we know, or we think we know, ADs in those marketplaces were involved. Have you been surprised at how little reporting there's been, not necessarily in Gainesville or in the state of Florida, but in other markets and with other publications where there could be an athletic director who fits the criteria?
No. And look, the reason is because I think Florida has been very adamant about secrecy in their process. And they're very, they like I said, they've wanted to do this on their own. And, Jeremy Foley has not used a search firm when he's made hires. of coaches. He does it all himself. So I think that sort of ethos is part of that, as part of the overall picture of how Florida is doing business. And I think that they have been very upfront with candidates that if this leaks, that the person's going to be out. And I think from the side of the people who they've talked to, they don't know necessarily where they stand. So if you're a candidate who, unless you're literally at the end of the process and you've talked to Florida informally, you don't want that out there because because then it might cause some tension with your bosses, or it makes it look like they didn't want you. You know what I mean? So it's I think there's a good reason on both sides of this for there to be a lot of secrecy.
So late last week, Florida did release plans of $100 million worth of facility enhancements to include a new football operations center, improvements to baseball and softball, which they had been working on that for quite a while. But within that release, Jeremy did say, hey, I want to stick around to see this through. So how do you weigh the variables of Jeremy Foley still being highly engaged, no matter who's hired, and potential reports of candidates being told they can't do much with the senior staff, if anything? How heavily do you weigh those variables on the consideration of potential candidates?
Well, yes. I mean, as I wrote back a couple weeks ago, and Florida, and I know Jeremy, I don't think agree with this or this take on it, but one of the things I've consistently heard throughout my conversations about the Florida job is there is some trepidation about what Jeremy's role is going to be going forward. He is going to maintain an office in the building. He is going to be a fundraiser. He is a legend. He is a guy who's run that show for 25 years and who's been there for longer than that. It's impossible, absolutely impossible, to not have Jeremy Foley cast some sort of shadow if he's going to be hanging around. Now, some people can look at that and say it's a positive and say, look, you've got at your disposal somebody who knows everything about Florida, who can get things done, who knows how to raise money, who can be an incredible resource for you on just a variety of issues. And to have that sort of expertise and experience is absolutely great. But also some people may look at that and say, if I want to go in here and make significant changes to the department and, run things differently or hire some new people in key positions, is that going to draw pushback from Jeremy Foley, who is still, may not be officially the AD, but is still the AD emeritus, quote unquote, and is still going to be around and still going to, when he speaks, people are going to listen. So I do think, look, people can say what they want. That is reality when you take a job of that magnitude. And I know that, like I said, I know they disagree with that of Florida, and I know Jeremy disagrees with that, but I just don't think there's any way around it.
Off the cuff, Dan, which Power 5 AD jobs are better, given the current dynamics of what we've just talked about? Which Power 5 AD jobs are better than Florida?
Yeah, look, it's hard to say. I mean, it's funny. I always sort of look at it, and I've not been an AD, so I don't know everything that these guys and women deal with at their schools, and every school's got its own interesting brand of politics. I've always felt like if I were an AD, I would want Chris Del Conte's job at TCU, or I would want Bernard Muir's job at Stanford. Private school, a lot of money, you don't have to deal with the state board of trustees, and all that kind of stuff. You've got, wealthy boosters. The expectations aren't as crazy. So for me, I've always felt like those are some of the best jobs. TCU, Stanford, maybe even Vanderbilt. But, I also look at it and say, okay, if you're an AD who, you kind of want to you just want your department to win at everything and win national championships and whatever. Certainly, you'd have to put Florida right up there in the top handful because you've got, the incredible revenue possibilities and the demographics of the state and everything like that. So I don't know if you would rank it first or third or seventh, but it's clearly one of the best.
Obviously, this is a story you're still working on. So, and the role of D1 Ticker in one question is not to create speculation. So we're not going to go there entirely, but it's hard to avoid it to a certain degree. Do you think there's a likelihood that Florida's eventual AD comes from within the SEC?
Well, let me put it this way, and I feel comfortable saying this. I mean, they've reached out to people. They reached out. I heard to Jeff Long, and Jeff wasn't interested in leaving Arkansas. I don't think when I say reach, I don't mean serious conversations. I just mean made a phone call. I think Scott Strickland is a guy who fits sort of the profile of what they should be looking for. I mean, he's the right age. He's a sitting AD. He's accomplished a lot. Good personality, can run the public side, great with the media, that kind of thing. Absolutely, he's someone from within the SEC who, I think they should be and have looked at.
In your estimation, is there any chance that the search ends with somebody outside a Power 5 institution right now?
I don't think so, but again, it's funny. You make a list, and then you start crossing off names, and someone isn't the right age, or someone's not going to leave, or that kind of thing. And it's a very small group in the end. That's what's interesting about it. So, if they can't get a deal done, then yeah, they could have to go, look at some other options. But I still think that the draw of that job at the end of the day, they will be able to get a deal done with the sitting Power 5 AD.
And that's today's One Question, brought to you by Turnkey Search, a top industry search firm since 1996. One Question is designed to give D1 Ticker subscribers valuable insights on how executive leaders in college athletics think about key issues on their respective campuses, in their departments, or within their leagues and conferences. One Question is brought to you by Turnkey Search, a top industry search firm since 1996.